You pin both our videos.
Yeah, we're both pinned, we're both spotlighted.
Awesome.
Okay, hello everyone. We are having an amazing conversation today. I'm so excited for all of you. I'm so excited for everyone in this room and everyone who will watch it later because this conversation is a little bit taboo, but it's such a shame because it's such a central part of our lives. It's something that we live very strongly as women, not just because we keep halacha, but also because we experience cycles. And I think this is what people don't fully get. It's not just about Taharas Hamishpacha, it's how are we living aligned with our cyclical rhythm. And that's why we're bringing this together from both your background and my background. And we're both Kallah teachers. But for myself, that was actually the last part for me. Like I first came into this work as why don't women know about their cycles? It's magic. Like, why don't we know about this? And I started teaching this and doing this work. And then the more I did it, I started realizing, hey, for Jewish women, the struggle is really with okay, I don't mind my period so much, but I mind Niddah. Can we like focus on that? So that's how like all of a sudden this became a big focus in my work, even though that wasn't the original plan. But here we are. And I love how you teach Taharas Hamishpacha. Like whenever I see you offering your courses, it's very much with a cyclical approach. Like there's no good or bad part of the cycle. Each part has a gift, each phase has a gift. So that's where I think we're really aligned. And I think that's where we'll focus this conversation on how can we tune into the power of each phase of the cycle and each phase of the Niddah and Taharah cycle and what each one has to offer us.
Sounds good to me.
Amazing. Okay, so I guess you'll first introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are and what you do, and I mean, some of you here are here because you know Nechama. You want me to introduce myself. Some of you are here because you know me and you want Nechama to introduce herself. So we'll try to do a little bit of both. So go right ahead.
All right. So, hi, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy Monday morning to do this. And I'm really excited it's happening. So, my name is Nechama Stahl. I am a college teacher and a life coach. I work with women around many different issues, but somehow Taharas Hamishpacha, the cycles, relationship tends to come up a lot in almost any conversation. Even women who are coming to work through something else, somehow this topic will always make its way to the table. Which I see Pessy nodding because there's almost like it's inevitable. It's almost inevitable that this is going to come to the table because I think it is so central to our experience in general as women, which is one of the reasons I love always learning more about it and delving into it more deeply and uncovering all these like new pieces of information that almost were like lost along the way. We never had access to them and now we're coming into them again, which I find absolutely fascinating. Yeah, and as you can tell, I get really excited about the topic. So
Yeah,
your turn, Pessy.
you're in for a fiery conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like I started saying a little bit how I got into this. But yeah, same. Like this is I find that people can do I don't want to like compare. Obviously, therapy has its gifts and everything has its place, but there are literally people who do years of therapy and they're like they come and work on their cycle. And it's like, oh, my cycle was literally the window for it all. My cycle was literally here as my reflection, as my guide, as my inner life coach, as my inner therapist. And this is really about holding ourselves. And so much of Niddah that we'll get into also, like a big struggle that people often have with it. And again, this is not a blanket statement, but what I find a lot, it's how are we holding ourselves? Because when we're in a relationship, of course, it's hard to be separated, but also that's where we really see, okay, how can I be with myself within a relationship? Because we always want to strike that balance of not being too enmeshed, not being too codependent, but also having that full and wholesome embodied union and also having that self within the union. So I think that's a big one that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I think for many of us, we never really came into Taharas Hamishpacha from a either an embodied place or even from an understanding place. It was very much like this is just what you need to know to do. It's very action based. Dare I say almost masculine, right? Like a very, very this is the list, this is the yeses, this is the no's, don't you dare. And this is like just keep it, as well as you can, like almost with this fear.
Yeah.
And Baruch Hashem, it's definitely changing. I think a lot of college teachers today are doing a better job of not just giving over the rules, so to speak, which I never like thinking of halacha as rules in general, but I guess we can get into that later. Um, it is being given over, I think, today with a little bit more of like an understanding of how does this enhance our lives? What does this mean to you? Making it more personal almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you said that piece because this is, for me personally, I could share, and I know that a lot of women have experienced this as well. I once I started connecting to my cycle, and I didn't mention this before, but my other job is I'm a fertility awareness educator, and I kind of bring the two together. And fertility awareness is a little bit similar in the way that it's also an embodied practice around our cycle. It's tracking our cycle to know when we're fertile or not, and people use it to prevent pregnancy naturally, to achieve pregnancy naturally, to understand our hormonal health. And when I was doing that more, that's when my relationship with Taharas Hamishpacha changed immensely because I was connected to my body in a whole new way. And all of a sudden, yeah, like I was living in my cycle. I was embodied with my cycle. And it wasn't just, like you said, rules to follow. It was, oh,
Yeah,
wow, I'm going through a transition now. Let's say I'm changing my linen for the 7 days. And this is like an embodied practice, like I'm shifting something in myself, in my life, in my home, in my relationship, and then, moving upward. And we could talk about the different stages of Niddah, like the bleeding days and the counting days, and there are different stages to everything.
for
But
sure.
that was like the ritual, like sometimes we forget, we lose touch of what a ritual actually is, right? Like a ritual is meant to connect us.
Yeah.
And then it became just this thing of like, oh, we have to do this. It's like a pressure, it's a burden. So yeah, that's a big
For
one.
sure. For sure. Absolutely. And I think what I noticed a little similar to what you're saying is that I had started doing some work, like let's call it more on the coaching side of things. And
Mhm.
like cycling in general was a topic that came up because it's so essential to healthy living. And um, what I found was that later, when I was training as a Kallah teacher and learning Taharas Hamishpacha, and I had all this background information, like I always say this when I talk about my course and I introduce it, it was almost like putting together a refresher course, and I knew I wanted to include all a bunch of like topics and information. It was all right there, like relearning Taharas Hamishpacha deeply and understanding it. And learning it more clearly, all of a sudden took on a whole new meaning. Like everything suddenly made so much more sense when you have that cycle and the flow and the different phases. It really all comes together so differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's really like the avenue for us women to know ourselves better.
It is. It is. I think the feminine, it almost has to be. It's part and parcel of who we are. Yeah, it's so deeply ingrained in our experience as women. It only makes sense. It only makes sense that there would be all of this, cycling happening on all different fronts and levels and aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We have a
Sure.
bunch of beautiful topics to cover, and this goes straight into our first topic, which let's discuss the 4 phases of the cycle, and specifically how we move through the like menstruation, the days of counting, and mikvah, like those first, I guess, those first 3 phases, but also the fourth phase is going to be important as well. So I guess I could start with giving like an overview of like the biological part of it, the physiological part of how our cycle works, and then we can go into the Niddah and Taharah aspect and how that really reflects it spiritually in such a beautiful way.
Awesome.
So we start with the 4 phases that we go through are menstruation, which is when we're bleeding. The follicular phase is when we start, the egg is starting to mature. So we're getting ready to be released at ovulation. Our hormones are rising, specifically the hormone called estrogen, and that's going to be an important one to know because that raises our libido, our energy levels. So much of like that good part of the cycle that we like about ovulation is due to estrogen. And then we'll talk about the other hormone of the other side of the cycle that we actually is also equally important and we don't value as much because we like just being, um, masculine, I guess. I don't know. That's what the world praises a lot.
Yeah.
But then, so estrogen rises in the follicular phase. The follicles are starting to grow. The follicles are what actually is going to mature and release the egg. That's inside our ovaries. And then the uterine lining is also starting to rebuild. So this phase is really about rebuilding. And like almost like if you think about the inner seasons, menstruation is the inner winter when things are like fallow, like everything is quiet. And then spring is when it starts to grow. And that's the follicular phase. We're coming out of the winter into the spring. And that's when we're counting towards mikvah. The follicular phase is basically the Shivanakiyam. Then we have the inner summer, which is ovulation, which is the peak of our cycle. That's when we're fertile. There's like a few days around ovulation when we're actually fertile. We can't get pregnant every day of the cycle. And that also often coincides with mikvah, not always. It's important to know that like people think mikvah equals ovulation. That's not true. We all have our own individual cycles, but it very often does correlate with mikvah being as we transition from the inner spring to the inner summer, like that peak of our cycle. Then once we're on the top, the only way to go is down, and we start descending. And I know this is like some people will see this as a negative thing. I actually started valuing it a lot, especially since this was my most challenging part of the cycle, the premenstrual phase. That's what got me into this work, was struggling with PMS and feeling really down and moody and like feeling out of control in that part of the cycle. And that's what opened me to this awareness of, okay, there must be something deeper here. And I started digging and finding answers. So the premenstrual phase is the inner autumn. the inner fall, when the leaves are shedding, we start feeling more vulnerable, maybe more sensitive. And this is really a time when it's so important to like start tuning into ourselves, having more of that self-care. And I started talking about this a little bit now that we're in the 3 weeks. This is also so related to the descent that we're having now, the 3 weeks, 9 days. Commemorating the Charbon Beis it's a time. Literally, the Jewish calendar reflects also so much because if you think about the seasons, right? We go through the seasons throughout the calendar. So we have Pesach, is spring, and I talk a lot about redemption in that phase, and then we have this time of the year when we commemorate destruction and what we have, not only destruction but also the rebuilding that comes afterwards, because right afterwards we're going into El Tishrei, which is a rebuilding phase. So that's also really cyclical. And I always had a hard time connecting to like the seasons of the year, and when I started connecting to my own cycle, it was like, oh, this isn't my body, this lives in my body. Like it's all one thing: the body, the earth, the world, our Jewish history, our traditions, everything is connected.
Yeah, I think
So
they're all like little like microcosms of each
yeah,
other. It just exists on this level and on this level and on this level. And
absolutely.
the more you start opening your eyes to it, you just start to see it so clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just to finish the cycle, and then you'll take it up to the Niddah and Taharah process. So the luteal phase, which is our premenstrual phase, is a descent. It's going downwards. We're preparing for the new menstruation. It's almost like the harvest for the new winter, and we drop into that. And that's really, it's supposed to be a really a place of sacred self-care, a place of coming home to ourselves. And I know it's not how many of us see menstruation, but that's really the idea of what the cycle is meant to be for us.
Yeah. So the way I see the correlation happening on the Taharas Hamishpacha side of things, and I don't think there's any like general rules. I think a lot of women will find they'll hit different seasons and different phases at different points. But let's say the way that we would imagine it working out, right, is when we become Niddah, we're in that winter phase. A lot of women have so much resistance around becoming Niddah. It feels like it's a bad thing. It feels like it's a negative thing, almost like they're being punished, but it actually isn't. It really doesn't have to be that way. I think when we reframe and understand what Niddah actually is and what it's all about, we start to realize that it's not a like description of us as people, and it's also not like a sentence, like a verdict. It's really an opportunity. I think Niddah is a time where we take that pause. You know, you spoke about winter being quiet, being almost dead, like nothing's happening on the surface. Let's be honest, we kind of need that as women. You know, our bodies physically, on a very physical level, they feel that way when we're going through our bleeding days. We need more rest. We need more quiet. We need like warm food. Like someone make me soup, please, you know? Um, we have that when we become Niddah. And then even in the marriage, even in the relationship, I think one of the things that I try to talk about a lot is that there's this balance that we need to have between the individual person and the couple. And I think Niddah really offers us the opportunity to go more within, to think a little bit more about who we are as people, not in a selfish way, but in an exploratory way. Like, what's happening for me right now? What am I going through right now? How am I showing up in my relationship? How do I want to be showing up in my relationship? But the focus is definitely more internal, right? It's Niddah almost creates a space that lets us see what's in that space. Without taking the step back, we never really stop and think about it. And I think if you talk to couples who are going through a long phase of time of no Niddah, is that they sometimes will reflect this without realizing what they're reflecting, is that they don't actually have that pause. They don't have that time to see what's in the space that, like, if we both take a step back, what fills that space? And I think that's really one of the greatest gifts that going into that Niddah phase gives us. It's like, oh, okay, let me take a minute, let me recalibrate, let me recalculate, let me assess, see what's going on here, and then we can move forward. And then we move into, let's say, the spring, right? The Zayin. So physically, we're starting to feel a little bit better. We're coming more into ourselves. We're feeling a little bit more feminine, a little bit more flirty. Zayin really, if we think about it, it builds anticipation. It's that time of we're still reflecting, but yet we're also looking forward
It's
to
the
the
bridge.
future. Yeah, exactly. And if we use it that way, if we use it intentionally, I think that really allows us to come into our chafifa preparation with so much more preparedness and readiness. And then I look at chafifa as its own step, almost like its own phase, because it is such an important process that so many women overlook. They look at it again as that like that technical thing of you got to do this, this, that, and the other. And really, it's meant to be about so much more than that. It's about an emotional preparation. It's about a mental preparation. Yes, there's also the physical preparation, but it really should be about so much more than that. It's like it's taking everything that your Niddah phase gave you this month, everything that you realized about yourself, everything that you like maybe recognized even about your relationship, and in like bringing that in with intention into what's going to come afterwards. I think one of the biggest misconceptions around Khafifa is that it's all relationship based, and it is and it isn't. We think that the only relationship it pertains to is our marriage, and that's really not true. It pertains to our relationship with ourselves. It pertains to our relationship with Hashem. Like there's so much connection that can be happening there. It can be such a magical experience. And then we go into mikvah. Mikvah, I guess, would be, let's say, that summer, right? We're on our high, our estrogen is right up there, and we have that reunification. And I think it's so interesting that we overlook this, that the order of reconnection really does start with yourself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and your husband. And I don't think that's for naught. I think that's actually the way it needs to be. We need to first come into ourselves and accept ourselves, like that self-love topic that comes up a lot and is misunderstood. Then we need to reconnect with our source, our creator, the person who breathed life into us. And then we can pour that forth and bring that forth in a relationship with another person and create this like this whole unity and this whole entity. And I don't think it's for nothing that that's the order that we go through. And then we have our post mikvah phase. You know, we forget that there's a post mikvah phase too, right? We have those few days right around mikvah where we're totally in summer, but then we move into the next phase
Yeah.
and our hormones are already shifting and we're starting to feel a little bit different. And that's where we're in connection with our spouses, but we're also starting to notice some of the contrasts. And I think that's such a valuable phase as well, because we're still Tahira, like we can still relate to each other in that specific way that happens on the Tahara side of the circle, but also we're in that like coming into awareness phase before Niddah, before we're going to retreat and give ourselves the time to work on it in ourselves. But now we can work on it relationally and
Yeah.
seeing the contrasts that are there, seeing the way that we relate to each other when we're not at that peak state, you know, coming into that fall, so to speak. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
I love how there's like, if you take the four phases of the cycle, you would say like two are more inward and two are more outward. We could say masculine or feminine oriented, but it's not even so much about that. Like the period menstruation is more definitely an inward phase, then we come out in the follicular phase, and both of those are nida. And then
yeah,
we have the two other phases of ovulation phase as being more outward and the premenstrual phase being more inward, and both of those are tahara. And I don't think it's a mistake that we have two in our self state and two in the relationship state, because each one
right,
we're meant to be, okay, how can we be in relationship in this way? How can we be in ourselves this way? And both ways, right? Like relationally, in ovulation summer like excited phase, and relationally in a more vulnerable inward connecting in a deeper way. So like each one had, like, this is what it is, each phase has something to offer. It's not negative, positive, good or bad. It's what does this phase have to offer me and
yeah,
my relationship.
for sure, for sure. I think there's so much value, there's so much value to each one on either side, like on either
Exactly.
in either state. There's so much value to seeing who we are as individuals and who we are as couples. There's so many gifts there to be uncovered.
Yeah. So let's get into why are so many women struggling with this mitzvah. Let's get straight into
Yeah,
it.
yes. Honestly, I think if I had to break it down, I would choose three reasons that I think women struggle around this mitzvah. I think the first one is misinformation. They either learn things not the proper way or with not as much information to let it make sense or feel comfortable. A lot of myths around Taharas Hamishpacha. I would say that's a pretty big one, right? Especially women who got married at least, 10 plus years ago, things were being taught very differently. And if you haven't gone to a refresher course or relearned it, definitely do, because there's probably some piece of information that you either don't remember correctly or didn't learn correctly. And just that alone can be such a huge relief for a lot of women, is actually learning the halachos properly. I think a lot of misinformation also leads to unnecessary anxiety around Taharas Hamishpacha that for a lot of women comes up. So definitely misinformation, I would say, is a huge reason why for some it's just not, they're not enjoying, let's say, Taharas Hamishpacha.
And
Another,
part of misinformation, unless this is a separate thing that you want to say, but part of misinformation is also the perspective and the approach that we learned it from, which is like okay, we both trained with Rachel Goldbaum. Everyone,
yeah.
she's amazing. And a lot of the approach that we came from, that we is how woman centered this mitzvah is, and it's actually not just woman centered; it's man and woman centered, because it's not more for the woman, more for the man. I think it's like so much of our
It's a
culture is
couple. It's Taharas
either
Hamishpacha. It's the family.
exactly. Yeah, but I think so
Yeah,
much of the culture around us is either patriarchal or feminist. And it's like one or the other. And what our tradition really shows us is how everything is really equally powerful and
yeah,
equally considered. And I think this mitzvah shows us that more than anything. But a lot of people were not taught from that woman-centered approach. It's like, oh, I'm doing this only for my husband. I don't get anything out of this. It feels like a stress. It feels like a pressure. And not only the information of how they learned it, but also that kind of approach, which is really bringing a lot of resentment for women.
for sure, for sure. I would put that in the category of misinformation because I think even that point alone of like needing to be there for our husbands is a huge misconception. And in general, like that's not only Taharas Hamishpacha, like let's talk about intimacy, let's talk about, that's such a big misconception that a lot of people have. It really is. I don't even like to say it's that a husband's obligation to his wife. We each come into this relationship for each other, right? There's such a give and take that we
Mutual.
both
Yeah.
show up. We show up for different reasons and we show up in different ways, but essentially we both show up for each other. And
Yeah.
that's the piece I think that people don't have is that there really is such a joint component to that. And in Taharas Mishpacha, definitely, it's like I said, it's Taharas Mishpacha. The woman may be doing certain actions, but it definitely is an experience that the couple has to go through.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason we both keep harchakos because this is about both of us and our relationship with each other, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I think another reason that it becomes very difficult is that, like I said before, it stays at information. It doesn't become intentional and it doesn't become meaningful. And I think Yiddishkeit has to be intentional and it has to be meaningful. Any mitzvah that we do should have meaning behind it, right? We're told, Chazal tell us, don't just do things by rote. Think about what you're doing. Like, let it be meaningful. And in Taharas Hamishpacha, especially, it's so easy to fall into that, like, okay, this is what I got to do, counting my days and doing my bdikos and doing my, like, it's so easy to get technical. But I think that's where us as women, we could make it meaningful. And for a lot of women, I think that's also missing is that if you start to put the intention into what you're doing, and if you start to stop and think about what you're doing, that also stops it from feeling like a pressure or a burden that you have to carry. And then I'm going to say this, even though it's not going to be politically correct. And I think this is something, Pessy, that we've been exploring this over the summer in this class that we're taking is that there's going to be this innate discomfort around Taharas Mishpacha. It's
Yeah.
just there. It's just built into the way that this mitzvah was given to us. It's a chayk. We don't understand it. We'll never really understand it until Mashiach comes. And there's always going to be this element of, something just doesn't feel good or right or makes sense or in alignment or there's an anxiety or there's a fear or there like as much intention and meaning as we're going to give it and as much information as we're going to have, there may still be that little something of, and it's just part of how Hashem made the world. And I actually think it's almost poetic, it's almost poetic that Taharas Hamishpacha falls into this category that we actually will never fully understand it because it really is what's the right word? It's the microcosm of Galus and Geula. And until we don't get to that final Geula, we're going to be in Galus and we're going to be in darkness and we're never going to fully understand and it may not fully be comfortable. And I think for a lot of women, that's hard. For a lot of women, that's hard because they want the answer that's going to make everything better. And there are answers that will make everything better. And your experience can absolutely change. You and I are like, we've seen that happen for ourselves and I've seen it happen for so many women that I've worked with and taught. And yet, let's just accept the fact that we're still in Gullus. We're still in Gullus, and there's always going to be this little something that we maybe don't understand or don't appreciate or can't wrap our heads around or our emotions around.
Yeah. I love that you said that. We definitely need to name it. And this is why, um, I mean, you've seen how I approach this work a little bit. It's not, so I'm giving a class in, like next week, we're starting on Sunday. It's a 12-day immersion actually. And it's literally specifically what you just said. I mean, I think it's the last two things. Maybe the information also, but I don't even focus so much on halacha. I don't teach information. It's not a refresher course. It's called Secrets of Niddah. And it's literally this part of, like you said, Galus and Geula. And you know what? At the same time, I'm going to come back to the challenge for a minute, but at the same time, it's also the biggest promise ever because Yerushalayim is compared to a Niddah. And it's actually a blessing. It's actually, I have to get the right, I have the source somewhere, but it's a blessing. It's considered, it's not, it's a bracha, not a negative thing. We might look at it, oh,
Mhm.
you find considered a Niddah, it's like a negative thing. It's actually a blessing because just like husband and wife come together, there's a path forward from Niddah. We have the Tahara process. Niddah is not a there's a way back from it. The
It's
same
not the end. It's not the end.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
The same way
It's
we
just
can
a
say, oh,
phase.
we're 2,000 years in Galus and like there's no way out. This is the promise. No, your slime is compared to a niddah. There is a way out. Maybe it's a very, very long cycle. It's like, like I compare when women come to me working postpartum to do the fertility awareness method, it's like, okay, how do I track my cycle? It's like, no, you're in a cycle. You're just in a very, very long cycle. You have a very long, early infertile days, we call it, when you're not yet fertile. And it might take you 2 years to become fertile again, but you're tracking that return. And
Yeah.
this is where we are. We're in a very long cycle, but there are cycles of Galus Gula throughout history. You look back throughout history, right? Like starting from Chava, there are cycles of exile and redemption throughout history, and we as women are carrying that because we are embodying the Shekhinah, right? We're embodying the
Yes.
feminine. The Shekhinah is a divine feminine, and the feminine is going through this exile process, and we are living it in our bodies. And as negative as it sounds, as painful as it sounds, when we are embodying that, and the second thing you said about intention and meaningful, embodiment is a huge part of that because the third part you said about being a chayk, it's true that logically we can never understand that because the masculine part is logic. The feminine part is embodiment, is deeper understanding without really making sense. And that's what I focus on in Secrets of Niddah. We're not making sense of something that we can't make sense of logically. We're embodying something that we can feel. And that's when we're reclaiming it, when we're actually feeling it in our body, when we're being present with it. Yes, we have the moments of discomfort, but how are you being in discomfort? Can we be comfortable with discomfort? I think that's a big challenge in our generation, right?
Yes.
Like being
Yes.
comfortable with
Yes.
discomfort and moving through it and breathing through it, right? Like being in that process. And that's building us, that's building ourselves, that's building our relationship, that's building the strength inside of us. And that's also giving us so much insight. There's so much there for us when we're able to stop fighting it and start flowing with it and being with it. And what does this space have to offer me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think embodiment is it's such a huge part of the work that you and I both do
Yeah.
because it's such a key component and it's such a key factor. It really is. It's the feminine way. It's the feminine way to be embodied, to feel and to know, not just know. It's very, very important.
Somebody's asking in the chat, is there something wrong with me if I'm totally okay with that?
No, no, that's amazing. Good for you. That is
You are
beautiful.
flowing
Keep
with it.
enjoying
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because it won't be
Actually,
necessary.
I will say
Yeah.
something about that though, because I've had this come up this year in the course that I teach. I teach a course called Becoming One. I always do it during Sphira. We re-immerse into Taharas Hamishpacha. We talk about halacha, but there's also so much that goes into that. And the question came up because I say, like we have the conversations that nobody really is having, and we answer the hard questions. And a woman said, well, we talk about everyone struggling with Niddah. What if I struggle with being Tahira? Like, what if that's
Right.
my
I get that
struggle?
a lot.
What if
Yeah.
I'm really
Exactly.
comfortable in Niddah and
Yeah.
I don't want to be on the other side? So it happens. It really does happen. It's so and the fact that Taras Mishpacha is not a struggle for you is a beautiful, and it should never be a struggle for you. It should always be a wonderful experience in your life, or even a neutral experience in your life. Oh, I would say hopefully it'll be beautiful, right? But yeah, there's no end to the way that we can feel out of sync. No matter what side of the Tahara circle or no matter what phase we're talking about, there's so many different ways that when we're not in tune and we're not embodied that it's almost like a signal, like, hey, look here, right? There's something here. There's something here that you can learn. I think that's one of the gifts of becoming embodied is being able to see those signals and start to understand them.
Yeah. It's almost like I keep going back to the seasons. So, like, I used to have favorite seasons and worst seasons. I don't really anymore because each season is beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
But fall and winter used to be my struggle. And surprisingly, that was my struggle in my cycle also, obviously. But at the same time, spring and summer aren't always, a bowl of roses. Like, you can have allergies, you can have mosquitoes, right? Like, each season, you could be boiling hot. Each season has its things. And we can enjoy the gifts of it, and there are also challenges of it, and that's what it means to be in flow with it. It's to meet whatever is coming, whatever is meet yourself wherever you're at, meet the challenges, whatever the challenges are coming up, meet the gifts, like really be in that flow, and don't lose out, don't miss out on the gifts just because the challenges are overwhelming, and there are ways to work through the challenges as well.
Yeah. I think that's actually a really common misconception is that being in flow means everything is great all the time. It
Right.
actually doesn't. It means things
Nope.
are really hard some of the times. You're just not getting stuck there. You're,
It
you're
means
still
knowing it
going
won't
with
be
it. Like you're
forever.
moving through it
Yeah.
rather than saying, oh, great, here we go, another roadblock. It's like, oh, another roadblock.
So exciting.
Yeah. How wonderful.
But I think the biggest gift of living cyclically for me is, how this too shall pass is a nice motto. It wasn't anymore just a nice motto. It was actually in my body. Like my body knows cycles. My body knows this too shall pass. It's not just a nice thing that, oh yeah, this too shall pass, you'll get over it. No, I'm in it right now. This is my present reality. And also it won't be here forever because I know the nature of cycles and I'm moving through it. That's what flow really is.
For sure. For sure. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so we went through the phases and we went through why women are struggling. We did also touch a little bit on this. Like this is a big complaint that comes up a lot with women feeling like that they have an unfair like share of it, like the burden is on them. We touched on it a little bit. Is there anything more you want to say on that?
Um, I mean, there is a lot that we could say. There's so many different directions we can go, and I think we already spoke about that. It's not meant to be one part of the couple. It really is about the couple going through an experience together. And at least the way that I understand it and the way that I see it is that the purpose of that experience is to create that wholeness between them because that's ultimately the goal of marriage, right? It's to
Right.
become more whole, it's to become more complete. And I think Taharas Hamishpacha, when we view it as a couple experience, it does enhance that wholeness and the relationship. I don't think it's meant to be just the woman, so to speak, keeping Taharas Mishpacha, but I think there's also something to be said about ultimately it is the woman who's, let's say, taking the actions, right? She is helping herself move through different states of spirituality. She's moving from Niddah to Tahara. And I think some women do resent the fact that that's on them. And yet, I think at least what I found to be helpful for a lot of women, or for some women that have this struggle, is that if you can shift your focus to a little bit like it's definitely more of a spiritual rant that I'm about to take. So it's not going to be for everybody, okay? But Shechina is feminine and Shechina is in Gullus. And I think there's a certain poetry to the fact that women are the ones that are maybe taking like going through the motions, right? Of moving from Tahara to Niddah and back and forth through those states. And I think it's because it's the feminine journey that we're going through. It's this feminine journey that's been playing out over thousands of years, all the way going back to the sun and the moon, and even before. And I think there is a certain poetry to the fact that it's us that are going through the motions here right now in this world in our own lifetimes because it almost has to be. It almost has to be the feminine because it's such an innate part of who we are as feminine beings and as women. We can understand it. We can carry it. Like we can embody that process of going through Galus Geula, going through disconnection and connection, finding our way to that wholeness. For some women, being able to reshape that, like if you're struggling around Taharas Mishpacha, or if Niddah is hard for you. So, what does the Shekhinah feel like right now? Like this is the experience of the Shekhinah. This is the experience of Hakadosh Baruch Hu waiting for that return, waiting for Klal Yisrael to go to the mikvah. Right? There's something deeper that's at play here, and for some women, if it does feel like an unfair burden, are you opening to changing your perspective? Like, are you opening to shifting the way that you view this rather than as being something that I have to suffer through, but like something that I can understand in the way that Hashem is suffering right now? So if that's helpful to anyone, then sometimes that shift in focus can just change your experience from feeling like a burden to feeling like a privilege almost.
Beautiful. And I also think that it's something that like someone was asking, how do we, like, can you elaborate on embodying it? I think it's something that we have to like really experience for ourselves. We can talk and talk forever about embodiment and embodying the Shekhinah and embodying your feminine and rising into your feminine and really feeling it. And you're only going to experience it when you experience it. Like
Yeah.
really go into your cycle, be with your badikas, be with your bleed, be with your process, be with accounting, be with whatever
Don't just
ritual.
do it. Don't just do it.
Exactly.
Don't
Yeah.
just think about what you're doing. Ask yourself, how does this impact me? What does this mean to me? When's the last time you did a badika and say, well, what does this badika mean to me?
Right.
It takes 2 seconds. It takes the same 4 seconds that it takes to do your badika. That's how long it takes to ask yourself the question, what am I doing right now? Even what day am I up to? How do
Yeah.
I feel about being up to that day? Just little ways of checking in with yourself, tuning in with yourself. I think that's where embodiment starts. It's actually taking the time to ask yourself, how do I feel around this? What's
Yeah.
happening for me?
Yeah, and even if making meaning is too much right now, it's more like, okay, literally just feel yourself
Mm,
doing it. Be in the body experience instead of like, I just want to be out of here. I want to run away. I don't want to do this. What does it feel like? Like we said, being uncomfortable, being comfortable with the
with the
discomfort. What does it feel
uncomfortable.
like for those 4 seconds,
Yeah.
literally 4 seconds to be with it? And what is your
Mm,
body experience in that staying power?
yeah. And maybe at the end, Pessy, we could do a little bit of like a breathing exercise on embodiment.
Sure. Let's see if we get there because there's a lot of questions coming.
Yeah.
But that would be great. Yeah. So there are um yeah, okay, so there are questions coming in the chat, but I want to first just make sure we cover the topics that came in before that we like said before. These are topics that come in a lot that we meet a lot. Um, so we already like flowed through some of them because we're just having a flowing conversation and things that keep coming up. So like connecting to the body versus only learning information and halacha. That's like I think the
Yes.
biggest piece that's missing for a lot of women. It's like it's just in the head and we need to be in the body.
And you know what? I'm just going to throw in here from a Taharas Hamishpacha perspective, even when you ask a shaila, like so many women ask a shaila with information and they don't realize that so much of the answer will actually depend on the way you felt around it, what you were experiencing at the time. Like every piece of information really, and not just, I don't mean information as in facts, I mean information about who you are and what was happening for you at the time really changes the way a Rav will answer your question. It's not necessarily always black and white. Sometimes it's more colorful than that. And that plays a part even in asking shilas, like even talking to Rabbanim. It's not just about information. Halacha, one of the best lessons that I learned from Rachel is halacha is halicha. It's just the path that you take through life. This is the path that's going to take you to a close relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What does that look like for you? And some women really have a hard time around this. Like, what do you mean? How can my Rav tell me this and her Rav tell her that? And like, what's the truth? Like, which way is it? What's the right way? Because it's halicha, it's a path, and everyone has their path. Everyone has their way of building their relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu and building their relationship with their spouses. And because we're all unique people, the answers aren't always going to play out the same. An embodied answer is not going to look the same for everyone. Information is information, and we have a lot of information to sift through. And sometimes asking a question is just about, I don't know as much as you, so you have all the information. Tell me what I don't know. And sometimes the question is, this is what's happening for me in my life. Guide me. What's
Yeah.
the right halicha? What's the right way for me?
And something else that really stuck with me from Rachel that I think it's just a huge perspective shift is when we understand how much Niddah, how much our cycles really, when we're in our natural cycles, obviously, is hashgacha. Like
Oh,
there's
yeah.
Hashem knows exactly what each couple needs and each person needs in their relationship and in their process. And as hard as it can really be to like, oh, and I'm not sugarcoating any struggles. There are people who struggle so much, not just the struggle with Niddah, but literally they might be bleeding for weeks, or literally they might be planning a vacation and then they get their period that day. And these are real struggles, these are real things. And then there's an invitation there of why is this happening for me right now? What is this telling me? Because it's not a mistake. There's no mistakes here. This is nature. Nature doesn't run by mistakes. Nature runs by Hashem. And like what is really going on here? So that brings us right to like it's on the bottom of the list, but that just flowed in right now about wedding planning, vacation planning, like how we like want to control our cycles, but our cycles are literally uncontrollable. I mean, it is controllable, but at a very high cost. So
Yeah. Yeah.
let's get into
Yeah.
that.
I think that's really what it comes down to. It's this balance of, and I know I'm going to offend some people by using the language that I'm going to use. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. But I think it really is this balance of emuna and control. I
Yeah,
think it really is a balance of the two because the more we recognize that we're actually not in control, we can tell ourselves that we are, we can create the illusion that we are, we can do so many things to ourselves and our lives to convince ourselves that we're in control. Even just using the term birth control tells us that we're in control, and essentially we're not in control. And whenever we come up against an instance or an experience in life that shows us really clearly that we're not in control, it's like, oh shucks. I thought I had it all figured out. And I don't say this to belittle the experience. I've been there. The pain is tremendous. The pain, the frustration. I've gone through periods postpartum where it took me very, very long times to be able to get to the mikvah. And that is very, very painful. And yet, the moment I learned a lot of this information and opened myself up to this new perspective, and I honestly asked myself, well, what did my relationship need right then? What did me and my husband need at that moment? Maybe it was being in Niddah. We didn't appreciate what Niddah was all about. We didn't understand how to use it properly, unfortunately. But had I yes known, right? Like, and I'm not saying this because I coulda, shoulda, woulda, but there was a gift there. There was a gift there for us. There was an opportunity for us to approach our relationship in what a Niddah relationship looks like. And maybe we missed the opportunity back then because, like I said, we didn't have this information and we didn't have the right approach. And yet there's just if we're willing to to let go of control and open ourselves up to a little bit more emuna and believing that there must be something here. There must be a reason that I'm, going on vacation while I'm Niddah. There must be a reason that my baby is 4 months old and I still didn't get it to the mikvah. There must be a reason that I'm constantly staining and I'm going through such short periods of tahara. What might that be? Like, and I think a great question for women to ask themselves, or even for a couple, if they're in a place where they're able to have this conversation with each other, I think a great question to ask is, um, what's the hardest for me or for us right now? And what can we learn from that? Because there's probably something there that you never realized about yourself. There's probably some dynamic that you never opened yourself up to. And I'm not saying that that's the reason that Hashem put you in this situation, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to expand. It's an opportunity to get to know yourself and your spouse a little bit better. And I do think it really comes down to that balance of emuna, letting go, believing that there's a reason that we're going through this challenge. There's a reason that we're going through this struggle, and control versus no, I'm going to make sure that I'm clean on my vacation. I'm going to, well, clear. I don't like the word clean. I'm going to make sure that everything, goes according to the schedule that I want it. I'm going to make sure that I'm not in need of the day of my wedding. Like, it's really, I see
Never
it as
mind if Hashem decides
balance.
that he wants you to be needed, you're gonna have standing on birth control as well. That's besides the point.
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this. I was sharing that how Rachel told us how any chuppahs nida that she did have and she did not have many were all due to birth control.
Birth control.
None of them girls who were planning their cycles naturally around their chuppah. So just saying.
Yeah. And it really, like, I think a thing that a lot of people are missing is people like to throw around this thing. Like, whenever there's someone who tries to, like, say how amazing Taharas Hamishpacha is, I hear this a lot. It makes your marriage stronger. It's like you have this constant reconnection. It's beautiful. This is why Jewish marriages do amazing. I think it's like really fluff in a way. I think what we have to understand, it's not a passive process. Yes, there is huge opportunity here, but also this is where the deeper work is being called in. It's, yes, like you were saying, how are you in the Niddah process? How are you connecting as a couple through different states of Niddah and Taharah? Because that's the invitation. There is tremendous potential for growth and connections through the whole process. But it's not necessarily going to be passive. It's more like, okay, how are we showing up in these different phases? How are we showing up in our relationship? How are we showing up for ourselves in different ways? And it's this idea of like relating in different ways. Like, just like with Hashem, we have multiple kinds of relationship, right? Hashem could be our father, our king, our friend, our lover, like everything. And it's how we relate to him, right? We relate to him in so many different ways. And this is what Rachel also taught a lot, right? There's Gila, Ditza, V'chadva, and there's Ahava, Achva, Shalom, Various, right? Like, where's your relationship now, and how are you relating now? And really optimize that, because we really get to have a full, well-rounded relationship through this.
For sure, for sure. I think what you said is really the key. It's not just about getting through the cycle each
Yeah.
month. It's not about doing like keeping Taharas Hamishpacha each month. It's tuning in, it's paying attention, it's noticing, it's asking questions. It's being willing sometimes to ask the harder questions and sometimes being willing to not even have an answer, but just sit with the question, and
About with
someone's asking like,
discomfort.
well, what does that look like? What in a practical way? Well, when I'm Niddah, me and my husband, are we spending time together or are we not spending time together? Are we using that time to each go in our own way and do our own thing and just see you at the end? Or are we intentionally making time to spend together? Knowing that we have to keep our chakos, knowing that we have to be careful and yet making time to be together. What does that look like for us? How can we be together while staying true to halacha, meaning while keeping our chakos and yet still creating ahava and friendship between each other? What does that look like for us? That space that we keep talking about that Niddah creates, it's not meant to be an empty space. It's like, okay, when we take a step apart, now what fills that space? What shadows are coming up? What projections are coming up? Oh, I thought that you would be the kind of husband that da 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 da, and then turns out I'm a Niddah, and all of a sudden you're not da 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 da. Why? Or I would like that, or what would you like? There's so much room for us to learn and to notice and to be mindful about around this process. And I think it really does have to start with awareness, paying attention, ask the questions, notice, really like experience it, not just go through it.
Yeah. So let's get into some practical ideas, because for two things. First of all, this comes up a lot. If a woman needs that physical touch or feels very isolated and gets depressed during Niddah, like it's physically very hard for her, what are some practical tools we can, go over for that kind of situation?
Yeah, that actually comes up so much. That comes up so much. I think my biggest suggestion to women who really do struggle around physical touch and not having it during Niddah is question number one for you is, are you open to something different? Like, are you open to hearing another perspective? Because if you're not, then that's okay. But just recognize that what we're essentially going to be doing is pain management. We're going to be trying to handle the pain and disappointment over the fact that your husband cannot give you that hug, that back rub,
And
calm
also,
you
can we
down.
just plug in that when Niddah is hard, it's actually reflecting something good on your marriage as well?
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. And I tell this to women all the
recognize
time. Like when
that.
people say, oh, it's so hard to be Niddah. Yay, great. Because that means that there's something really beautiful waiting for you on the other side. It's a good sign. It's a good indication. It's a very good indication. If you are, however, open to like a new perspective, right? If you are willing to open yourself up to more, okay? So let's say right now you're very anxious, you're having anxiety around something, and the hug from your husband is your anchor that calms you down. Great, beautiful. It's a great anchor. Now you have the opportunity to expand. You have the opportunity to expand your toolkit to get another way to calm down. Now, maybe you'll have to work with someone to figure out what that is. Like maybe a good somatic coach or a good practitioner can help you, a good breathwork facilitator can help you tune into what that might be. And there are definitely ways. There are definitely ways that you can help yourself be less anxious in that moment that don't rely on that hug. Isn't that beneficial to you, right? Isn't it helpful for you to know, well, what's if I'm not Niddah, I'm Tahira, but my husband's out of town, and all of a sudden I'm feeling anxious, and now I'm stuck. So it doesn't have to be about Niddah Tahara. It could be about personal expansion. And what if there was another way that I could learn how to manage my anxiety? What if there was another way that I can handle my depressive thoughts in that moment that didn't just rely on? So if you're willing to shift your focus from, oh my gosh, like this is a burden of Niddah Tahara, what if it's not just about that? It's like your own personal expansion. What if you can gift yourself with more tools and more ways that you can navigate life? Another thing that I find sometimes to be very true for women who have a hard time with that physical touch during Niddah is that very often that is a couple whose primary love language is physical touch. And again, are you open to expanding? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's a beautiful thing, great, you know? However, what if the two of you can learn to expand your love languages? What if the two of you can learn to expand your interactions as a couple while you're in Niddah that doesn't rely on physical touch? Because now you have more ways to fill each other up and fulfill each other and complement each other and express love to each other. And again, you've broadened your life experience. It's not this narrow channel anymore where it always relied on this. Now, wow, we have so many options. Now when I get a gift or I get a compliment, oh my gosh, that feels so good, you know? So I don't need the physical touch alone right now. When I have it, amazing, great. And then when it's not there, look, we still have options. I think it really can be an invitation to expansion to open yourself up to more opportunity. If you're willing to ask yourself that.
Yeah, and I also feel like another level of that expansion, and I think this maybe comes up more in the early stages of marriage, but I really think this in all stages, is to really expand your circle of who's here to support you, right? Like it's not just that bubble of husband and wife, even though that's a beautiful bubble, but then neither really gives you an opportunity to connect to friends, to be in social spaces in ways that fill you up and nurture you, because it's so important to have female friendships as well, nurturing friendships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so happy you brought that up because I think it is such a huge component. I think it's such a huge component to womanhood in general, and it tends to get overlooked or not appreciated as much as it should be. Having a circle of supportive women is so important for so many life events,
Yeah.
for life in general. It really is a huge I want to use the word bracha, but that makes it seem almost like it's like nice if you have it. No, 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 it's really important. It really is important to have
Essential.
that
Yeah.
circle of support.
Okay, there's two questions I want to address that came in that I think it really weaves into each other. So I got a private message here. I have a hard time with being tahura. I have a hard time because I always feel like I'm showing up for my husband and not really enjoying the process. So we addressed this a little bit. And I feel like also, um, so first of all, this really gives you a chance to step back and experiment with how to relate in different ways while you're nida. right? And you're not like in that feeling that pressure so much. But also, Taharas Hamishpacha really is that opportunity to show you how much more there is to the relationship. I think whether it's the woman or the man in the relationship, sometimes people feel that pressure, like this is whatever. And I think sometimes maybe in the culture around us, like if you take Taharas Hamishpacha out of the picture, sometimes that's what a
Hmm.
relationship is watered down to. And it's so sad. And it's
Yeah.
like there's so much more to this connection than just the physical intimacy part. And Taharas Hamishpacha really helps you expand beyond that. So it's almost like you said before, this is an invitation to explore, to expand, like more like how can you connect in different ways? And another thing, like a different question someone brought up here in the main chat was, can you expand more on how this helps the husband? Like what part of the process does he have, and how this is mutual? So I think this is also a lot of it. It gives value to the relationship for both sides, the man and the woman, because first of all, it shows the man the value of a woman, right? How a woman really is here in so many different ways in relationship, right? So it really helps the man understand that in a deeper way, in a deeper connection. And it also helps the woman value herself in that way. It's so much of that self-value of reclaiming our womanhood literally in different ways because of this process. But another deeper part of this last question about the husband part of it, this is a deeper concept, and it might just make your question stronger about, oh, this is all on me, but really it's look at it as the value part. So there's a Gemara that says a man without a woman is a man without life. And if you think about what is life, the cycle is a source of life in our bodies. We hold life energy and life force through our cycles. And Chava was actually also called the Im Kal Chai, the mother of all life, which after she brought her actions brought death to the world, which is a whole concept that our cycles, we move through life and death within our cycles because they're both two opposites of the same energy really flipped in different ways. We relate in different ways to it, but that's beyond what we can really explore here. It's so
Oh
deep.
yeah.
But the process of we have when we understand what our cycles give us, the power of our cycles inside of us, that's a reclaiming we have to do inside of ourselves. But a man doesn't have access to that. It's not in their body. Just like a woman has the power of birth inside of her, a man doesn't really understand that fully because it's not in his body, right? How does a man access this? How does a man even have the potential to appreciate this in his life is if he has a woman to really be in it with, right? To have this kind of connection, to be able to experience it. Yes, a little secondhand, but the closest he'll possibly get, right? So
Mhm.
my belief is that Taharas Hamishpacha was actually implemented to bring this to the relationship. A woman has this gift, regardless of Taharas Hamishpacha, a woman always has the gift of her cycle. You can look in the secular world, there are so many beautiful things out there about cycle awareness, connect to your cycle, come home to this, amazing. But Taharas Hamishpacha goes beyond that. It really brings it to the relationship because the cyclical part, the cyclical process is a gift to the relationship when you really know how to harness it. And it also brings it to the man's life because now the man is also in tune with a woman's cycles. The man is also in tune with his wife's rhythm. And the world is so linear that we don't have this perspective of the cyclical reality. And this is what gives us that cyclical rhythm. So again, this is a deeper process that you'll embody and experience in your own life more. This is just words that might not mean anything right now until you experience it. But that's my belief of what Taharas Hamishpacha brings to the relationship. It brings this gift of the cycle. And if you don't understand the gift of the cycle yet, you're not going to understand the gift of Taharas Hamishpacha. That's why we need both.
Yeah, I'm actually going to add on to that. I think I agree with everything that you just said. And I think there is another level to the male component here is along those lines, right? Of like a man that's not married is not a complete man, or all the psukim that talk to that idea. I think another way that Taharas Hamishpacha impacts a relationship, and maybe more for a man this way than for a woman, perhaps, I don't know, but it's the conduit for them reclaiming their shadows. Without being married to a woman and without having to go through this different phases of a relationship with a woman, a man would never have the opportunity to really discover parts of himself. And if our goal in life is to reach a certain level of wholeness and completion. So I'm going to use the example of the moon, right? The moon is always whole. The moon is never missing a part of herself. It's just you don't get to see all of it. And in Golos, that's our life. We don't really see all of ourselves. Our work is to bring more of it to light. Our work is to
Reveal.
uncover the hidden parts, to bring those shadows.
Kallah and Geula both have the root word of revealing.
Yeah, Yeah, it really is all about revealing.
And
Right? We talk
cycle
about
is
this.
gal gal. It's all the same root.
It really is all in one big, like one big story, just playing out on so many different levels. And so I think the way that a husband is part of the equation is that if he's approaching this, if it's being used well and with intention, is that it's giving him the opportunity to learn more about himself, to discover parts of himself that he never realized. And I heard a beautiful idea from Rabbi Roy that if you think of life as a ladder, women were created and remain at the top of the ladder. They're up there. They have worth, they have value. The moon is whole, right? The man's job is to climb the ladder. The woman's job is to remember that she's up there. And I think
Mm,
that's
I love
really
that.
so much of how Taharas Hamishpacha plays out in our life. It's not that there's something wrong with us, whether we're Niddah, whether it's Tahara. It's not a bad or a good thing. It's just our job of staying embodied and remembering, what we're here for and what we're doing and being able to be there so that they can find parts of themselves that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to find without this relationship. And not only this relationship, but this dynamic of Niddah and Tahara as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to pause the conversation. I'm saying pause because this is not over. This is just
Yeah, there's
getting
still so
started.
much we could talk about.
We're just getting started. I know we said like maybe we should do a little like breathing kind of grounding exercise, but we're going to instead use the last few minutes to share how you can take these resources further. And in those resources, both things that me and Nechama both offer are going to help you ground in so many tremendous ways. Like this is where the work is at. So I know Nechama, you have beautiful meditations to take this further. So I'm going to let you share
Yes.
about that.
Sure, sure. So, first of all, if you go onto my website, nechamashtal.com, you will have a free meditation that you can download. It's called Ani Shalom, and it really talks to this idea that we just finished with of wholeness, because we really are already whole, but we just have to sometimes remember that we're made up of many different parts that comprise that wholeness, and it's just a nice, not too long meditation on that topic of coming back to this idea of that we are intrinsically whole. So if anybody is interested, you can go download that. There is also a gorgeous experience if meditation is your thing. I created a meditative journey. It's called Eternal Rhythms, and it goes through the different phases of the Tahara cycle. It's 3 meditations, one for Niddah state, one for the 7 days, and one for preparing for mikvah. And it can be a beautiful way to start embodying Taharas Hamishpacha rather than just keeping Taharas Hamishpacha, making it intentional, making it meaningful, making it personal to you. So if you're interested in that, like I said, nechamashtal.com, it's all there waiting for you together with some other good stuff. You can go check it out.
Yeah, thank you. So I put that link in the chat, so and that's also going to be below the recording. So if you're watching the
Yeah.
replay, you'll be able to find it there.
Mhm.
And like I mentioned earlier, we're starting next week, and I specifically do this in the 3 weeks, 9 days time of year because I love tapping into the energy of the year because it elevates our experience with our bodies as well. So I offer this immersion called Secrets of Niddah. It's a 12-day immersion. It's starting next week Sunday, and it's going to take us through the 9 days all the way till Thursday. I think Tisha B'av is on Sunday, so it's stopping that Thursday before Tisha B'av. And what I got feedback from last year is like people were watching the replays over Tisha B'av, and like that was the most meaningful experience because it helps them connect through their bodies through this process. And it's both because I heard people have a very hard time with the 3 weeks and 9 days. I used to definitely, and then there are people who have a hard time with Niddah, and this really like brings both together. And a lot of things we spoke about here, Galus Geula, the moon, the feminine, the journey of the feminine through time, those are really things we're going to explore there a lot. And it's not just going to be information, it's going to be a very experiential process. We have a WhatsApp group that's only open for those 12 days because I find that if I keep it open longer, it just loses that sacredness. So we're keeping it for those 12 days where you can really process what's coming up for you. And we have the audio activations where it's like about a 10 to 15 minute voice note where I drop in like really solid, powerful ideas, or it's, you're like, whoa, where is this taking me? And it will have some journaling prompts so you can take it deeper as well. So it's the 2 classes plus a Q&A call, that's 3 calls, and the audio activations, it's going to be 3 in total. So it's like over 12 days, you'll have 6 pieces of content. So you'll have like a day of integration probably between each one, or like you'll have time for integration as well. You'll have 3 months access to the replays. So it's okay if you don't get to everything at once. And I know, Nechama, you do this with your courses as well. It's the best thing ever. I let people come back every time, every year again, because guess what? You'll have an amazing experience this year with where you're at now with Niddah and Taharas Hamishpacha and the 3 weeks and 9 days. And then next year you'll have a deeper experience again because you'll be in a whole different place and you'll approach it from a whole different perspective and it will elevate you in a much bigger way as well. So you'll have the awesome experience this year. You'll come back again next year. People are coming back from last year and they're so excited because well, we elevated a lot of it. Last year was a much simpler version and we expanded it a lot more this year. And this is where you get to reclaim a lot of things we spoke about here, like what is needed for you, what comes up for you in this time, and how can you really bring this home through your cycle. So the
I'm sure it's
meditation
going to be amazing.
will.
It sounds amazing
So the
and so
meditation
needed.
very needed because it like we don't need it, we need information as well, but this is I think the part that people are really missing. The embodiment is really where it comes home to. So you'll get it from Nechama's meditations and come to I put a link in the chat where you can get a little treat if you're here on live. Grab it because it's not going to be around anymore. It's just in the chat right now. And then the link for Secrets of Niddah will be in the description as well. And I'm looking forward. And again, remember, it's lifetime access. So if you're investing now, the price will probably be higher next year, but you'll already be in. And we're looking forward to taking this further.
Yes. Thank you so much, Pessy. We definitely have to do this again.
Yeah. Thank you so much everyone for joining. The link is there. Are you saying you can't open it? Hold on, let me just drop it in again. And Nechama Stahl for the meditations. Okay. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Nechama. This was so
Thank you,
special.
Pessy. Yes. Take care, everybody. Have a great
Yeah.
day.